Rayman is back, apparently, for the second time. The 30th Anniversary Edition, released 31 years after the original game, has got everyone talking, mostly about the changes to music, really. On top of that, it seems that amid laying off workers, possible nepotism, and a persistent taint of sexual misconduct, Ubisoft are working on some other Rayman projects again. What does this have to do with me? Well, a few years ago, I made a video diving into my thoughts on the first Rayman game. I did so on the DOS version. That's all well and good for what it was, but it remains true that I had never played it on the PlayStation platform, despite that being considered the definitive version of the game. So the 30th anniversary seemed like a good opportunity to remedy that. And it was broadly what I expected, pretty much the same as the PC version, but with several of the challenges being a little bit tougher. It was mostly in Bandland, which is widely considered to be the biggest difficulty spike, and the Cave of Scops, which is the hardest overall world. And that makes sense to me. They are probably the two most appropriate parts to give a bit of a nerf. I also knew that the cages you have to bust open to finish the game would be moved around, but it's how they were moved that actually changes the experience in ways I didn't expect, and that's what I want to talk about here. So here's where you first meet Patilla the Fairy, and thus gain the ability to punch, which you need to open the cages. At the start of the very next screen, bam, there's a cage right in front of you. Your fist is your new toy, and you're probably keen to try it out, so the PlayStation version gives you something to try it on. As you do, a medallion clamps down around your screen, and one of the 6 empty spaces fills up. Something in your brain at this moment clicks, and you go, ah, that's why I'm here. With this lovely layout the game has, your priorities in the adventure to come are made very clear. Now concerning the PC version, again you meet Patilla the Fairy. Again she gives you the ability to punch, and again you move on to the next screen, but oh no, there isn't a cage here. There's still one in the area, but it's hidden, and to find it you need to collect this fist way up here, which is possible, but it's a bit fiddly and requires knowledge of how plums and these green guys interact, so it's unlikely you'll manage it on your first playthrough. There are 2 more cages later in the level which aren't hidden, and the PC version left these ones where they were, perhaps with the thought that you'll still get the point eventually, it'll just be a little later on. This is probably true, you will get it at least on some level, but remember that the cages are necessary to finish the game, so giving them a unique sense of importance is valuable. The later cages need to be opened while juggling them between platforming, dodging enemies, and chasing other collectibles. In this environment, that value they are supposed to have isn't coming across the same way. Therefore, I think this was a bad change. Your first cage is much better on the PlayStation, but it's a curious change too, right? The PlayStation version in most ways is harder than the PC, yet for this, the first obvious difference between the two, it is the latter that takes on extra difficulty. And this continues straight through the game. All the way to the end, I felt like most cages were actually harder to get on the PC version. Sometimes because they were on a part of the map that was largely dormant for the PlayStation and spiced up to give us reason to explore. Sometimes because they would only appear once you did something else first. Sometimes it was out of raw bullshit. One particularly frustrating example is this one in Bandland, that on the console just falls from the sky as you approach. On the PC version it's in the same place, but you have to arrive and then look up to make it fall. Seriously, who the hell even thinks to do that? So I wanted to confirm this with numbers in some way, so I assigned every cage a difficulty value. 1 meant you basically got it for free, 2 meant you needed to do a simple trick or go slightly out of the way for it, 3 was a challenge, and 4 was an extreme challenge or hidden in a particularly counterintuitive way. With that in mind, here's how the 2 platforms stacked up. If you accept my methodology, which I admit is not particularly scientific, then it is clear that the PC version has the tougher cages. I had assumed that since it came out later and the earlier versions had a reputation for being completely brutal, it was just made easier across the board to address this, at least a little bit. What we're seeing here though reveals that that difficulty wasn't so much removed as it was transferred. Now in fairness, this cage on the PS1 is probably the single hardest in either version of the game. My numbers here are only really capturing an average, and I would also still say that the PlayStation is overall harder, even with this considered. But nonetheless, the change is interesting. If the cages were optional, then it'd be easy to guess what their thinking here was. Make the main path a bit more manageable for general players, while the side content can offer a greater challenge for the daring. This is essentially what all the sequels to this game did. But again, the cages are not optional, so this has little power as an explanation. Or does it? Yeah, the point as I see it is not really to avoid difficulty, but to delay it. It is expected that you won't get all the cages on your first run through an area. Some of them are literally impossible at this stage, which means you will be coming back later with your skills sharpened and your mind focused to find them. So despite appearing from the very start of the game, they can all be thought of as late game content. Thus, why not make them good and difficult, just as the late game should be? A very basic premise in the end, but a healthy attitude for the game and not just for the sake of the difficulty curve. It also strengthens your relationship with the areas themselves. When you first play a level, you're dipping your toes into something new. Later, when you're breaking open all the cages, you're not just exploring anymore, you're mastering. You're demonstrating that this environment, which once seemed so immense and so powerful, is totally unable to constrain you anymore. The PC's approach amplifies this. It helps to illustrate your growth as a player by giving you an easy picture of what you couldn't do before, but you can do now. This feels great, and it's done far better than it was on the PlayStation. But as I said before, it was a little too vicious with the easy cages. In the end, the cost of this seemed to be that early moment that the PS1 did so well. And I suppose it only feels great until you encounter one of those really dumb cages, which there are certainly more of on the PC. There's always a price to any design decision made, but it seems clear to me that there is a world where an ideal middle ground between these two can be met. Maybe that can be found in one of the other versions of the game, but that's beyond what I'm doing for this video at the moment. Oh well, it is what it is. You can make up your own mind for which one you think is better. For now, I'll just say, if you like the video, then, like it. See ya!